Good evening, everyone. We're so excited to be here. I'm Ryan McEnaney from Bailey Nurseries.
And I'm Debbie Lonnee from Bailey Nurseries.
And we are so excited to run through some of the new plants. We missed being there with you. We missed being with you last year, but we're excited that this year at least we can participate this way. We are recording this in advance, so please feel free to ask questions as we go through and we'll be able to answer in real time. So without further ado, let's jump in. We've got some new introductions that we maybe have missed over the last couple of years since we haven't been together, and then a couple sneak peeks at some future introductions as well. So with that, let's dive right in. You ready, Debbie?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. We are going to start with one of my favorite new introductions, a Heptacodium or seven sunflower. Debbie, you want to give a little background on this shrub?
Sure. This is a plant that came to us from some breeding friends in France. And while seven sunflower is not well known in Minnesota, it is listed as Zone 5, but we've done extremely well with this plant down at our greenhouse range in Cottage Grove. This plant itself has been in the ground for about 10 years. And this is a compact form. So if you think of the straight species, it can easily go 20, 25 feet tall. This is a plant that's going to bring it down into the 10-foot height range. And it has some seasonal aspects that are just really different from a lot of large shrubs. Has really beautiful bark. It blooms actually later in the season. And then those white flowers, which bring so many pollinators to the plant. It's just crazy. But then they turn into these red bracts, which just add a level of color in the autumn to the plant. So it's quite unusual. If you wanted to, you could leave it as a shrub like that top left picture. If you want to limb it up so it looks like a small tree and you can really enjoy that exfoliating bark, you can limb it up and make it look like a small clump tree.
Yeah, we've been down shooting some photo and video in the garden when this is in bloom. Debbie's not kidding. It is absolutely covered. I got some video on my phone and you can actually hear all the bees as they're flying around on the plant. It's really, really spectacular. And especially as that plant ages in the garden, that exfoliating bark is incredible. I was down this winter and then early this spring looking at it, and it's just getting better and better every single year.
All right, well, we're going to move on to, I think, a couple of our new Potentillas. And yes, we're introducing Potentillas because what better shrub do we have? People love to trash Potentillas. But, you know, for a lot of gardeners that don't have green thumbs, this is such an easy shrub to grow in the garden. And so this is work that was done up near Winnipeg, Canada. Rock solid, hardy. Zone 2. None of us want to live in Zone 2, okay? It's too cold. But we have two orange varieties that came from Dr. Wilbert Ronald up at Jeffrey's Nurseries. And this first one is Mandarin Tango. And this is basically an improvement on the old variety Mango Tango with more intense color that holds better through the summer. Now, sometimes in the heat of the summer, the Potentilla flowers are not as bright as they should be, but early in the season, late in the season, this is what you're going to get. So this is a single flowered form, a small plant. What I like about Potentillas is they fit nicely in small space gardens, in foundations, on city lots. They only get 2 to 3 foot tall and 2 to 3 foot wide. They're very easy to maintain, to prune. They tolerate full sun. So what other shrub do we have in Minnesota that blooms from June until fall comes? So Mandarin Tango Potentilla for a great orange color. And here's Marmalade, kind of a sister seedling, but this is a double form. So within our First Editions program, over the last few years, we've had a number of double flowered Potentillas. You have to kind of get up close to really see that. But when they first start to open, the flower bud looks like a little rosebud, and then it opens up with these very nice double flowers. And I actually think Marmalade has a more intense orange color than Mandarin Tango does. Other than that, it's very similar, 2 to 3 foot height and spread, tolerates full sun. The one thing I didn't say before is Potentilla are generally deer resistant. So if that's an issue in your yard, you may want to consider working with and using Potentillas in your gardens.
I was talking through some of our new plants with our dear friend Kelly Norris down in Des Moines. If you haven't read Kelly's new book, New Naturalism, it's fabulous. But we were talking through some of the new first editions and plants, and we were getting to the Potentilla, and Kelly said, wow, these new Potentilla, you even got me excited about Potentilla again. So if we can get Kelly on board, these are definitely worth at least looking at.
There you go. Well, if we can get my friend Heidi from Grow House enthused, maybe she's at the gala tonight, and so hopefully she'll like these new orange ones. All right, here is one of my favorite new plants that we've brought to first editions at Bailey's because it's so unusual. Again, another Canadian import. This is a little salix or willow called Iceberg Alley. It was brought to us by Jeffrey's Nursery up near Winnipeg, but it actually came from the East Coast in Newfoundland, and it was discovered in the wild. And so how many silverleaf shrubs do we have? We don't really have much. We have a few trees, we have some nice perennials like silver mound artemisia, but here's a beautiful silverleaf shrub. This thing is so beautiful. It's so easy to grow. First of all, it's rock solid hardy, zone 2, takes the cold. It only gets we put 5 to 7 foot tall. I think after a few more years of testing, we feel now Twin Cities is going to be about 5 foot tall and about as wide. Easy to prune back, self-branching, shapes up beautifully. The silver foliage kind of is powdery and thick. But in the spring, think about willows, think about pussy willows. We get those beautiful catkins. And this has an incredible catkin early in the spring. It kind of comes on just before the leaves emerge. So it's another season of interest. And right about now is when all that is happening. So I have found that this plant pairs beautifully with flowering shrubs like the Hydrangea paniculata in that flower on the top right. I love it with purple leaf or red leaf shrubs like our Fireside 9 bark. Loves full sun, very easy to grow. I just think this is a great new shrub for Minnesota gardens.
So I just bought a new house in January, and I was in a townhouse before, so now I finally have some space to landscape, and this is the first plant that went in the ground. So I'm excited we're going to have this. We have put a bank of them right along the side of the house. It's going to be beautiful. And after we run through these new plants, I'm going to take you on a little tour of the greenhouse and the garden at Bailey. And this is one in the garden right now that looks fabulous. So you'll get to see it in motion as well in a little bit.
That's great. All right, here's a fun little plant. Matcha Ball falciparia. I learned a lot about matcha tea as we named this plant, but this again from a great plantsman up in Canada. This is a very compact sorbaria. Some people might know this plant commonly as Ural falciparia, and the straight species is used in Minnesota, but not a lot, mostly because it suckers so much. Now, if you're trying to hold a hill or cover an area and really hold the soil, a suckering plant will work for you. But here's a plant that's more oriented to garden spaces, to foundations, because of the size and because of the fact that it doesn't sucker. And so Matcha Ball is very compact, really no more than 2 to 3 feet tall. I haven't even seen it get to 3 feet tall, and it gets just a little wider. So these are 3 plants that were down in our trial block. They form nice round balls all on their own. You don't have to prune them. They have very interesting compound foliage, and when it first emerges in the spring, has some nice peachy, orangey, apricot tones to the color. Now that will kind of go away as we get into the heat of the summer, and it's a little more of a lime green shrub, but a great small space plant. It does not flower much. If you know straight species that blooms in early summer with a white flower, we rarely see a flower on this plant, but it is quite an attractive foliage plant. And again, if you have small spaces, if you live on a city lot, this is something worth looking at that will not get overly big in the garden. And here you can see how we've used it in the display garden down at the greenhouse range. You can see that new growth coming on it. It's really quite interesting foliage.
And this one, that new growth comes out so early. the ones we've got planted in front of our office are pretty much fully leafed out already this time of year.
Yes, sorbaria is definitely one of the first things that says spring. You know, many of you might be familiar with a variety called Sem, and Sem has a nice color to it. It gets bigger, but it does sucker. Every spring I go out, I prune it, and then I get the spade out so I can start cutting the suckers out. You will not have to do that here on Matcha Ball.
Continuing with spring.
All right, lilacs. This is a new compact lilac, again from Jeffries in Canada. And this is basically a compact Miss Kim type. And Miss Kim is one of my favorites because of the fragrance of the plant. But Miss Kim in a Minnesota garden can easily go 6 foot tall, sometimes taller and wider. Wilbert did some breeding on this to kind of cut it in half, about 4 foot tall, 4 foot wide. Interesting elongated foliage, but that classic lilac fragrance and a lilac or lavender flower on it in spring. You can see the buds before they're open are a little more pink in toned, but then it opens up to more lavender. That picture on the right is just a very young plant, so it's not loaded with flowers. As it matures on, it will just give you a great pop of color in May into early June. And again, for small space gardens, this is a very good plant. So if you want to get a lilac into your foundation, but you don't have a lot of room, this would be something that you would want to consider. Loves full sun. We've not seen any mildew issues on this, and I know powdery mildew, many folks have asked about that the last couple of years. We've seen more of it on lilacs in the Twin Cities, but this one is nice and clean. It's nice and compact.
All right, we're going to stay with our friends in Canada.
I know. I feel like that's where we get all our plants from, but that's not true. This is Oscar Peterson rose, and I know many of you have utilized the Canadian roses, the hardy shrub roses that have come out in the last 20 to 25 years, maybe even longer. The Explorer roses and the Parkland roses. All that breeding work was brought together into one site. And while they're not doing a ton of breeding in Canada, they are still evaluating many of their seedlings. And this one came out in 2020. And in Canada, this is part of something called the Canadian Artist Series. And it's named after a famous jazz pianist named Oscar Peterson. We've struggled a little bit in our Easy Elegance roses to get more white flowers for consumers. We love a good white rose, and this one really fills the bill. It is rock solid hardy into zone 3 so for any of you in northern Minnesota, this is going to work. The flower does start out yellow, but then as it opens up to the picture you see here, it is a nice bright white. And oh, there you can see that yellow. See it in the bud? Almost little peachy tones too. It is a rebloomer. This plant blooms all season long. Just as with Easy Elegance, the Canadians have gotten really good with disease resistance. These plants need no spraying. They're grown on their own root. You might get a little bit of winter dieback. You quickly prune that out in the spring, give it a shot of fertilizer, and it comes up. And look at that top left photo. That is the rose hip on Oscar Peterson. It is one of the biggest rose hips I've seen. You know, a lot of shrub roses get a few rose hips later in the season, but not much. This adds a pop of fall color with these big, large rose hips, and they're very cool. And I guess if you want to make some jam or jelly out of them, you could certainly pick them and do that. So this is Oscar Peterson rose.
Last fall, we actually made some jelly from Oscar Peterson. It was really good.
Was it? That's
yeah,
great.
It was really good. All right. Now one of my favorite new ones.
Yeah, this is a prunus or a sand cherry. A lot of people know Prunus cestina or purple leaf sand cherry. This is work done by Dr. Mark Brand out at the University of Connecticut. And while this might be used more in the landscape trade for large mass plantings. If you have a large area where you need a ground cover or a hill that you need covering, this is a plant that you may want to consider. So this is a variety called Jade Parade. It is a spring blooming plant, and it is kind of a low ground cover plant. It has a white flower in spring, and you can see that arching habit. So the branches in the winter, it's kind of interesting. The snow will sometimes smash those branches down to the ground, and you'll think, oh my gosh, they've all been broken. But it just pushes them down to the ground. They lay on the ground, and then as they wake up in the spring, they put the leaves on. The flowers will be coming very shortly, those beautiful little cute white flowers. And then you get this great arching habit, beautiful foliage all season long, and then some great fall color on it. So this is our trial block down at the greenhouse range. We had 3 of them planted in a row. This plant goes about 3 foot tall, but it can easily go 6 to 8 foot wide. So if you are looking for something to cover some real estate, this is a nice choice. You know, over the years, landscape folks have used Grollo sumac, which is getting kind of boring. You know, green shrubs are necessary in the landscape, but this one has some more seasonal aspect. And I think during the summer when it's green, it is much more attractive than Grollo sumac. And Ryan, do we have a fall color picture?
We don't on this
one. We don't. Okay, well, just imagine this plant goes red to burgundy in the fall. And so really some great seasonal aspect on this, and you just have to find the right place to put it. We have this big slope as you pull into the greenhouse range, and we planted about, I don't know, 50 or 100 of them, and it is beautiful all throughout the season.
This is one, I've got a big hill in my backyard, and this is what's going in there this spring too. And also, I will say on this, so that bottom, that large picture, I was there the day we shot that, and the pollinators on this are so intense as well. It's almost, I always talk about it, it's like hearing a helicopter around you. There were so many bees on this. It was incredible.
That's great. Pollinator plants are important. Well, we've talked about this plant before, but we have it now in greater quantity. We had a little mix in the colors, and we got that all fixed. So you all know the lights azaleas from the University of Minnesota that were developed by Dr. Harold Pellet. And when he retired, Dr. Stan Hokinson took over, and they continued to do some work. And here's really the first true red azalea that has come out of the lights program. They offered a couple varieties to us in first edition. So in homage to lights, we're calling ours electric lights. This is just a great red color. I think this is a photography that was taken by that professional photographer at the University of Minnesota, and I really feel like he captured the color well. The flower buds are hardy to 30 below, an early spring blooming plant, and then it blooms first, and then the flower or the foliage emerges. This one is a little more upright in habit, 4 to 5 foot tall, but only about 3 to 4 foot wide. This one doesn't have the great fall color that some of the light series do, but this is such a great spring bloomer, and it's a beautiful, beautiful fire engine red. So we think you'll like it. It will tolerate some shade. I think what we've learned over 30 years of lights azaleas is they actually tolerate more sunlight than we originally gave them credit for. So I think there are more places in your yard that you can use this plant than you actually realize. So if you're looking for spring color, try this new electric light red azalea. Here's Little Spark Spirea. This is another French import at Bailey Nurseries. Over the 100+ years, I'll bet we've grown a bajillion Gold Flame Spirea. But in the last 20 years, Gold Flame has developed some weird problems. It almost looks like virus in the foliage, and it's very hard to propagate. So we have been looking for a substitute. And this was bred over in France. It's not exactly the same as Gold Flame. It's actually a slightly smaller plant. So again, great for small space gardens. But it's a nice, bright Spirea called Little Spark. So early in the spring, as the new growth is emerging, that new growth got some great orange tones, but then the foliage is more of a chartreuse or yellow color, which does hold very well in full sun throughout the season. It is a classic summer blooming spirea with those pink flowers. If you take a little bit of time after the first bloom to shear them off, you'll get some rebloom on then. And this one has really nice fall color, kind of pinks and reds. And so here you can see on the screen kind of a montage of all the colors. On the right is the new growth, and you can see those great orange tones. And on the bottom left, you can see that great fall color. So spirea, they're probably not trashed as much as Potentillas, but they are really a workhorse in Minnesota gardens. And there are a lot of summer flowering spireas to choose from. This one is short, compact, and really colorful, so worth looking at.
We've got another new spirea as well, Spot On.
Yes, well, this is from my friend McEnaney at Johnson Nursery in Menominee, Wisconsin. And Mike is just a great breeder. He's a fun guy. This is a different species. Some of you may not know it. Frichiana is the main parent on this. And this is a spring blooming spirea. It blooms in June. You'll sometimes get a little bit of rebloom, but not like that little spark that I just showed you. This is a taller plant, 3 to 4 foot tall, 3 to 4 foot wide. It might remind you of a very commonly grown variety called Spirea Tor, but this one is pink. And I was the one that kind of pushed to introduce this plant at Bailey's. One year in October, I do a lot of meetings in October. I needed to get away from my computer screen, and I went down to the greenhouse range. And this plant called my name. The fall color on it was outstanding. Some of the best fall color. There it is. I think I took that picture on the left. And so I started showing it to everybody. You know, I don't do all the decisions on new varieties. We have a lot of people that give input at Bailey's as to whether we should introduce something. And so it just got super great fall color. It's so easy to grow. When it's done blooming, you could do a little quick shear on it, and that's it. And then here's my fun story from Mike Yanni, that top right leaf. This plant has a little bit of spotty red coloration on the foliage. It's real irregular. It's kind of weird looking. At first we thought, what is this, some kind of disease or a virus or something? We tested it. We talked to Mike, and it's just a naturally occurring pigmentation in the leaf. And so, Mike actually put the name on this of Spot On, but originally he wanted to call it Dracula's Drippings. And I said to him, Mike, we are not putting a plant on the market called Dracula's Drippings. And he agreed, and he came up with the name Spot On. So again, an easy to grow. You could plant a hedge of this, an informal hedge, a single plant and a foundation planting. I think you'd really enjoy it. It has a lot of good seasonal color aspect and the best spirea fall color I've ever seen.
Love it. All right, we've got two more. And the next one is another one that might look a little familiar to everyone.
Love and Peace Rose. This was bred by Ping Lim, our breeder, and the gentleman who bred all of our Easy Elegance roses, and it won the All-American award many, many years ago. And we have brought this plant back. It kind of went away a little bit, and we've brought it back because we've discovered a few things about it. First of all, it roots beautifully, and it can be grown on its own root. And so we've brought it back into first editions. We have a few Bailey employees that over the years have done very well in their Zone 4 Twin City Gardens with this. To be safe, we've put Zone 5 on it. But this is truly a hybrid tea rose that will bloom throughout the season with that classic flower. It's beautiful for cutting, to bring in and put in a vase, those flowers that are yellow in the center and kind of edge in that pink. We've always loved this flower from Ping. And so it will be available in containers on its own root, and you'll find it in that purple first editions container now. So we're happy to bring that award winner back.
All right, and the last plant of the night.
Well, this is a future plant, so have a little patience, but you might see this plant in your local garden center in August of 21. And this is a panicle hydrangea, a paniculata called Little Hottie. It is work that was done down at our breeding farm in Athens, Georgia. We call that little company, Bailey Innovations, and this is a very compact paniculata, only gets 3 to 5 foot tall and 3 to 5 foot wide. It is loaded with blooms, not only on the top, but all the way around the plant. The blooms, when they first come out, they have some touches of lime to them and then go white and then take on a little bit of pink coloration to them. So we think this is a great alternative to little lime, which is out there. Here you can see it kind of throughout the season when it first starts blooming up there in the upper left, and then as it matures, you'll see it take on some pink tones. So we're pretty excited about this one. And if you think this one is good, you ought to see the future stuff coming from Bailey Innovations. There is some not only hydrangea macrophyllus for endless summer, but paniculatas for first editions. So we're really excited about that breeding work, which is coming off of that farm.
All right. Well, Debbie, thank you for taking us through all those. It's been really fun. I learn something new every single time I hear you talk about it. So thank you for that. Thanks everyone for watching this. And now, if you stick with us, we are going to take you down to our greenhouses to give you a little sneak peek of what's being forced into bloom. Also give you a little look into the garden, because some of the plants that we talked about today are also available in the auction. So stick with us, and thank you so much, and we will see you shortly.